Let me ask you this. What is the one thing that most people dislike about Christians?
That they think it's funny you're going to hell. That they say there's a God without demonstrating it. That they use a book to demonstrate claims even though that book is the claim.
Hypocrisy.
Oh, not what I was thinking. Awkward.
You say one thing and yet you do another.
Wait, is he talking to me directly now?
And you're very judgmental.
Rude. Hello, the Skeptic here. I'm just an everyday floating circle that watches people say extraordinary things and then responds with why I find it silly. And this week is no exception. Frank Turek, who has been on a Skeptic video before, often comes up with really bizarre arguments for the existence of God. Well, this week, he's fighting his own and claiming that God can be proven with evil. However, before we start today's video, if this isn't your first Skeptic video, hit the like, the subscribe and the bell. That would be brilliant. And a super thanks to those that hit super thanks over the last few videos. Chris Bowling and Eric Mishima. Lisa the Rainbow Giraffe bestows leaves upon you. More hen. Go on then, Frank. What have you got?
Christopher Hitchens, whom I had the opportunity to debate a couple of times. In fact, Christopher Hitchens was a brilliant British atheist, and he sounded more brilliant than he was because he had a British accent.
Hey, listen, it works for me, and I don't claim to be brilliant. In fact, I know I'm not smart, but I will use this accent to my advantage.
And he wrote this book, God is Not Great, How Religion Poisons Everything. And at one point he said this, he said, I am absolutely convinced that religion is the main source of hatred in this world. Hey, we get an amen for that.
More hen.
Is religion the main sort of hatred or the main source of hatred in this world? That's what Hitchens and many others are saying.
Well, Hitchens is only saying he's convinced of it. That doesn't speak for everyone. There are many things that cause hatred. Religion could definitely be one of them. But sure, if you want to rile up the audience this way, that's up to you, Frank.
Of course, Hitchens tragically passed away about 10 years ago, but he still has cohorts that say these things. In fact, when somebody points his or her finger at you and says, you're judgmental, you're bigoted, you're putting your values and imposing them on other people, they have just given you evidence for God.
I really hope you're going to explain why, Frank.
You say, well, how can that be? In fact, I was just talking to Pastor Chip this morning, that what we're going to talk about is one of the most powerful arguments for the existence of God. And Chip and I are in agreement that the one I'm going to talk about tonight is probably the most powerful. Now, for those of you that have been here longer than a year, I've been here before and we talked about 3 arguments for a theistic God. That's a God who's beyond the world, who created the world and sustains the world.
I'm not even sure what beyond the world even means. Is Mars beyond the world? Are we saying that there's a world-creating thing just floating through space, creating worlds?
And the 3 arguments that we talk about quite a bit, particularly on college campuses, is the first is known as the cosmological argument. It comes from the beginning of the universe. Cosmos is a Greek word meaning world or universe, and it says if the universe had a beginning, it must have had a beginner. Now, even atheists are admitting the universe had a beginning.
I don't know, Frank. The cosmological argument has been refuted by quite a few amazing atheists. But atheists don't need to have an opinion on a universe starting or beginning or whatever. Atheists only worry about one question. Do you believe there is a God? Yes, I believe, or no, I don't believe. Easy. There are some atheists that believe the universe had a beginning, and there are some that don't. Either way, it doesn't demonstrate a God.
The second argument we talked about last time we were here was the fact that the universe and life is designed. This is known as the teleological argument. Telos is a Greek word meaning design or purpose, and it says if there's design in the universe and design in life, there has to be a designer.
But who says that life is designed? I'll tell you. Theists. How do you know things are designed, Frank?
Now, we've covered this before, and there's scientific evidence behind these 2 arguments.
Where? Did you know the reason babies have more bones than adults is because when Lisa the rainbow giraffe, leaf be upon her, pooped out the first human baby, it hit the ground with such force that its 206 bones broke into around 300. It's true. The science confirms it. That's why babies have 300-ish bones at birth. And it can't be made up. Science supports it.
The third argument is not scientific in nature, it's more philosophical. Yet it's the argument that all of you have known since you were a very small child. It's the argument from morality known as the moral argument. And it says if there's one thing morally wrong out there, just one, like it's wrong to be judgmental, or it's wrong to be bigoted, or it's wrong to be a hypocrite, or it's wrong to torture babies for fun, or it's wrong to kill 6 million Jews in a Holocaust.
Or it's wrong to kill 2,391,421 people for apparently not doing what a loving God wanted. Oh, whoops, I probably shouldn't have mentioned that bit.
Then there has to be a God. Why? Because if there is no God, if there is no standard beyond humanity, then everything is just a matter of personal opinion.
You could spin it that way, Frank. Or you could look at it on a bigger scale and think that social species probably don't want to cause harm so that the species continues to grow. And of course, there are members of every animal society that don't work with the rest, but they tend to be removed somehow. Whether that's forced out of a group or put in places they can't do harm to others. If I thought it was okay to hurt others, it would be okay for others to hurt me. I don't want that, and I don't need a deity to tell me that. I use my brain smarts to figure that out on my own.
It would be just your opinion against a baby torturer's opinion, or your opinion against Hitler's opinion.
So when people reach the same decisions, let's say not killing babies, it's either their opinion or what you think is a God's opinion. So the only reason you don't kill babies, Frank, is because you believe something else told you not to. Doesn't that make you a terrible person? I hope you never stop believing in Sky Wizard Beard Daddy in that case. Otherwise you'd go on a baby killing spree, and that sounds horrific.
Well, we know these things aren't just a matter of opinion. It's not just my opinion that torturing babies for fun is wrong, or that murdering people is wrong. If that's the case, there must be a standard beyond us.
Maybe that standard is society.
That's represented by God's nature. And anything that deviates from God's nature is what we would call evil.
Hang on. Anything that deviates from what God would do is evil? But God killed over 2 million people. So how does that work? Does every person on Earth have to kill exactly the same amount of people as God? Well, that's not going to work well for the human race. If we don't enslave people, are we evil? This doesn't make any sense, Frank.
So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the moral argument.
What on earth was that look, Frank? The world's creepiest stare award goes to...
Now, you got to admit, it was worth coming out here tonight just to see God do that.
What the what? God is doing it? Then there's loads of stuff about American football, or football if you're an American. But I'm British, so I have no idea what's going on. So let's jump ahead.
If there's no purpose to life, you can't say one way of living is better than another. They're just different. And without God, there is no purpose to life. It's just your opinion against someone else's opinion.
Or your opinion on what you think a God's opinion is. Just saying that a God makes purpose doesn't actually make it true. How can a person show that a God gives purpose?
Now think about football for a second. The purpose and the rules of the game come from outside the game. When a couple teams show up to play football, they're not making up the rules. The rules come from someplace else. In this case, the commissioner and the owners get together, they decide what the rules are. So when the teams show up to play, the rules and the purpose, that's already been set.
Please don't use this as an analogy. Commissioners and owners, blah, 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 are people you can demonstrate exist.
Now, football's an arbitrary game, right? There could be different rules, and they do change them every now and then, okay? But the point here is that the purpose comes from outside the game. The rules come from outside the game. The same thing is true in life.
Not technically. The rules are made by people who are part of the game. I don't think that makes any sense. You wouldn't get tennis folks making up the rules for football because they're not a part of the game.
Well, let me ask you this. How do you know which map of Scotland is better? Is it map A or is it map B? What would you need to see in order to know which map was better? This is the interactive portion of the program. What would you have to see? You would have to see a real unchanging place called Scotland, right? If Scotland didn't exist, then these two maps here would be meaningless. But since Scotland does exist, you can say, well, map A, while it's not perfect, is a better representation of the real Scotland than is map B. In other words, there's an external standard by which you can measure these two maps.
However, Scotland existed before the maps of it were made. The maps of Scotland weren't drawn and then Scotland poofed into existence. Scotland existed and could be proven before the maps.
If there was no external standard, you couldn't say one was better than another. You guys with me so far? Well, that's exactly what we do when we compare Mother Teresa and Hitler. Mother Teresa isn't the standard. Hitler isn't the standard. There's a standard beyond both of them by which we measure both of them.
Okay, so I agree that Hitler killing millions was bad, but how do you demonstrate that it was a god that said it was bad? We know as a species that killing folks isn't great. It gets you jail time, and afterwards you don't do well in society since folks don't trust that you're not going to do it again. But I don't know how any of this proves a god.
Do you have to be a Christian to know this? No. Do you have to have a Bible to know this? No. In fact, it may surprise you to know that the Bible actually says this. Pastor Chip is a wonderful Bible teacher, and one of his favorite books, like mine, is the book of Romans. Here's what the Apostle Paul says in the book of Romans. This is in chapter 2. Check this out. He says, when Gentiles, these are people who are not Jews at the time, when Gentiles do not have the law, do by nature things required by the law, they are a law for themselves. Even though they do not have the law, they show that the requirements of the law are written on their hearts, their consciences also bearing witness, and their thoughts sometimes accusing them and other times even defending them. In other words, basic right and wrong is written on your heart.
Oh, jeez. A book that says it's written on your heart doesn't make it actually written on your heart. To me, it looks like someone observed something, like, I don't know, people not killing other people. And when those people didn't believe the same things, the original people went, well, it must be written on their hearts too. Couldn't it just be that we all descended from common ancestors who also didn't kill each other? Or if something bad happened to a member of their clan or pack or group, they were removed. No heart calligraphy, just an understanding that if it's okay if you kill me, it's okay if I kill you.
They didn't have a Bible. He was unjust for judging the Canaanites. They didn't have a Bible. Everybody intuitively knows objective right and wrong on the big issues. Now, the Bible gives us more details. The Bible talks about other right and wrong issues as well. Paul said, I wouldn't even know coveting was wrong unless God told me it was wrong.
I'm not entirely sure coveting is bad. But if you only do good things because you think a book tells you it's the correct thing to do, you must be a pretty crappy person. Frank then goes on to do a really bad version of Hamilton. If you want to see the full video, it's in the description.
In fact, if there is no God, then the Nazis were not wrong.
And I guess those Nazis are more powerful than the God, since the God didn't or couldn't stop Hitler. Or since there was this whole "in God we trust" belt thing, maybe the God actually agreed with what was going on. You know, if it existed.
Sorry, that's just the way it is. In fact, I had a debate many years ago with a Jewish atheist by the name of David Silverman. You can see this on our YouTube channel, at Cross-Examined YouTube channel. He was the head of the American Atheists at the time. And I kept asking him the question, David, on what grounds can you say the Holocaust is wrong if there's no God? And finally, he admitted, you're right. He said, the Holocaust wasn't really wrong.
Well, I couldn't quite believe that an atheist would say that, so I found the video that Frank was talking about, and as suspected, that isn't exactly what was said.
To convict the Nazis of obeying their government.
We, as a world society, judge our criminals, and we judge them as we see fit.
I know we judge them, so you're saying we just judge them based on our preferences. You know, in some cultures, they take care of their babies. In other cultures, they eat their babies. Which do you prefer?
I prefer the ones where they take care of the babies. I also prefer the ones where the Nazis don't do terrible things under the name of God.
But it's just a preference.
Yes.
Okay, so
It's an opinion.
Okay, well, if it's just an opinion, you're saying then, if it's just an opinion, I don't know why you condemn a Christian couple for not wanting to put a baby with a homosexual, because that's just their morality that they have every right to express themselves, don't they?
They have every right to do it. I'm saying it's a wholly immoral position.
According to who?
According to me.
Well, okay, well, that's just David
Of course,
Silverman.
it's all according to us. We all make our own moral decisions.
Yeah, I understand.
The only difference between you and me is that I take responsibility for my moral decisions.
There. Not quite how the conversation went down, so let's move on.
If God's nature doesn't exist, you can't say the Nazis were wrong. I mean, you can say it, you can't justify it.
You can't say that. Well, no, you can, but you can't mean it. Well, you can, but... What are you even saying, Frank? It can be justified because that's what human society deems acceptable. I don't understand why you can't get your head around the fact that society doesn't need to imagine a supernatural being to come up with what benefits us as a society. Even if there was a being that made rules up for us, how could you demonstrate it? Other than saying, it says so in a book. You're not arguing for why you think you're right. You're arguing for why you don't accept atheists thinking you're not right. It's all backwards.
In fact, if there is no God, love is no better than rape. Oh, you may like love better, but it's not objectively better.
Well, that escalated quickly. Jeez. Frank using dishonest tactics here, leaving out important words like consent. Nice one, Turek.
It's just your opinion. If there is no God, there are no human rights. You know, our country has been arguing about rights more and more. People seem to be inventing new rights. They have a right to this and a right to that, and yet many of these people doing this are atheists.
Maybe you shouldn't be bringing that up, Frank, given the recent Roe v. Wade overturning and the fact that uterus owners have less rights than guns is terrible. But sure, folks make up rights. What a dumb thing to say, Frank.
Do they realize that unless God exists, there are no rights?
Sure. There's so much to say to that I don't even have to say it.
I don't care where you are politically on this. Do you know, if there's no God, not only is there no right to an abortion, there's no right to life. You know, if there's no God, there's not only no right to same-sex marriage, there's no right to any marriage, natural marriage or otherwise. There's no right to anything. It's just your opinion. If there is no God, murder, slavery, and racism are not wrong. Just your opinion. If there is no God, then religious people have never done anything wrong. You can't complain about people being judgmental or bigoted or imposing their values on you. What's wrong with that?
Has this lost its way completely? God said that murder, slavery and rape was okay in some places, but you need to have a God to say it's wrong. How does that even make sense?
You wouldn't know that something was not right unless you knew that something was. Something can't be immoral unless something is. So when anybody complains about evil, you know what they're doing? They're actually giving evidence for God.
Why does this always happen? Random word salad. It sounds as though Frank is saying evil in the world is proof of a God, but that throws up so many problems. If a God allows evil, it's not really a God that I'd want to follow. Did it create the evil? How on earth does evil demonstrate a God? Where is all this morality proves God rubbish?
You say, how can that be? Well, look, because evil doesn't exist on its own. Evil only exists as a lack in a good thing. Evil is like cancer. If you take all the cancer out of a good body, you got a better body, right? What happens if you take all the body out of the cancer? Nothing. It doesn't exist, right? Evil can only exist in a good thing. Evil is like rust in a car. If you take all the rust out of a car, you got a better car. What happens if you take all the car out of the rust? You got a Pinto, right? You got nothing.
No. Wouldn't you just have a pile of rust or a pile of cancer? These analogies don't really make any sense.
In other words, in order to have evil, you have to have good. Oh, you can have sunshine without shadows. You can have good without evil, but you can't have shadows without sunshine. You can't have evil without good. So if evil exists, and we all know it does, then God exists.
All that to get to this point. No demonstration of anything, just saying random words and hoping it sounds good. I don't do evil things because I don't want evil things done to me. That, in no way, proves a God. It's a huge jump to say that there are bad things because there are good things. And if there are bad things, then there must be a God. Like, who thinks that's a coherent argument? Sorry, Frank, it really doesn't.
Not because God is doing evil, but because he's the standard of good by which we'd even know what evil was.
Why are you even renaming good, or things that you think are good, as God? Just call them good. Wordplay doesn't do it for me.
Now, you can ask the question, why does God allow evil? That's a whole nother question. We don't have time to get into it here.
No, go into it. I want to know why a God would allow evil, and why you'd then follow that being. Ugh.
But you can't say it disproves God. In fact, evil may prove there's a devil out there, but evil can't disprove God, because there'd be no such thing as evil unless there was good, and there'd be no such thing as good unless there was a standard known as God.
And that seems to be the entire argument, which just says, this can't be that without this. Okay, this whole video has been what you believe, Frank, but it hasn't been demonstrated. I still don't believe you, so what now? Does morality, whatever that actually is, prove a God? I don't think so. But maybe you're convinced. Let me know in the section below. For now, I'm going to skeptic this off as evil, not demonstrating God. Not even one little bit. A big thank you to this month's ticks on Patreon: MISM, Addy Rockart, the Enixes, Travis, Elizabeth, Jakari, and the absolute lunatic Jimmy, as well as all the base ticks. You can become a supporter on Patreon too, at patreon.com/theskeptic. The link is in the description, along with links to all my other socials. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. From me, the Skeptic, stay safe, keep thinking logically, and ask questions. Skepticism is the first step towards truth. See you next Saturday.